I never thought living in a peaceful neighborhood could turn into a battlefield, but one woman in my HOA decided to make it her life's mission to scare and control everyone around her. She was loud, nosy, and always looking for trouble. People called her the Karen of the HOA, and honestly, that title fit her perfectly. From the very first week we moved into this neighborhood, I could feel her eyes on me. It wasn't the warm kind of welcome a new neighbor deserves. No, it was sharp, judgmental, like she was waiting for me to mess up so she could pounce. And trust me, she didn't wait long. One evening, as I was unloading some boxes from my car, she stormed across the street with her hands on her hips. "You can't park there. This is against HOA rules," she barked, pointing at the spot right in front of my own house. I was stunned. I had barely even unpacked. And here she was, throwing rules at me like I was some kind of criminal. At first, I tried to laugh it off. "It's just for a little while. I'm moving things inside," I explained. But Karen didn't care. Her eyes narrowed, and she spoke louder, making sure every neighbor could hear. "Rules are rules. If you think you're above them, you'll regret it." Her tone was sharp, and her face twisted with anger, as if my car in front of my own driveway was a personal attack on her. That moment was my first taste of what life with Karen would be like. She wasn't just a neighbor. She was a self-appointed sheriff of the neighborhood, determined to scare people into submission. Every little thing became an excuse for her to confront us. If our grass was half an inch too tall, Karen noticed. If we left the trash can out an hour longer than usual, Karen was there with her threats. If kids played too loudly in the street, she came out yelling like she owned the whole block. The strange part? Most neighbors didn't fight back. They rolled their eyes behind closed doors, whispered about her at block parties. But when Karen stood in front of them, they went silent. It was like she had trained everyone to stay quiet, to avoid her wrath. And maybe, in a way, that was her goal, to scare people enough so no one ever stood up to her. But me? I wasn't raised to bow down to bullies. Still, I didn't want to cause drama right away, so I kept calm and polite. My wife told me to let it go, at least for now. But the truth was, Karen wasn't the type to let go. She thrived on creating chaos, and soon she set her sights on making my life miserable. One Saturday morning, I woke up to find a bright orange notice stuck to my door. It was from the HOA. The paper claimed I had violated 3 different rules: parking, lawn care, and noise disturbances. Noise disturbances? That one made me laugh out loud, because my wife and I live quiet, peaceful lives. The only sound coming from our house was maybe the TV at night, or the sound of us cooking in the kitchen. Yet here it was, in bold letters, claiming we were disrupting the peace. I knew exactly who was behind it. Karen. That notice wasn't just a piece of paper. It was her message. She wanted me to feel cornered, anxious, and scared. She wanted me to start second-guessing every move I made in my own home. But instead of fear, all it did was light a fire inside me. I confronted her the same evening. She was outside trimming her bushes, pretending like she hadn't ruined my morning. I walked up, holding the notice in my hand. "Did you really file this complaint?" I asked. She didn't even hesitate. She smiled that smug, satisfied kind of smile and said, "If you can't follow the rules, maybe this neighborhood isn't for you." Her words were dripping with arrogance. It was the kind of tone that made your blood boil, the kind of tone that told you she thought she had all the power. She wanted me gone, and she wanted me to know it. I clenched my fists but stayed calm. "You picked the wrong house to mess with," I told her. She laughed, rolling her eyes, like I was just another naive neighbor who didn't know how things worked around here. What she didn't know, what no one in this neighborhood knew yet, was that my wife wasn't just any ordinary woman. She was a state judge, a woman who had dealt with far scarier people than Karen, a woman who didn't flinch in the face of intimidation. But I kept that card close to my chest. For now, because sometimes the best way to deal with a bully is to let them dig their own hole deeper. And Karen? Oh, she was digging fast. Every week, a new notice appeared. Parking violations, unauthorized decorations on our porch, even a claim that our dog barked too much, which was ridiculous because we didn't even own a dog. It was harassment, plain and simple. And the more she did it, the more I realized that Karen wasn't just trying to scare me. She was testing me. She wanted to see how far she could push before I snapped. The funny thing about bullies is they often mistake kindness for weakness. And Karen thought she had me pegged. But the storm she was walking into, she had no idea what was coming. I'll never forget the day she tried to publicly humiliate me. It was during an HOA meeting with a handful of neighbors sitting in folding chairs, sipping their coffees, trying to get through the boring agenda. Karen stood up, pointing her finger at me like a prosecutor in a courtroom. This man refuses to follow the rules. He parks wherever he wants. He ignores the regulations, and he disrespects our community. Her voice boomed across the room, and I could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on me. For a moment, there was silence. Some people looked at me with sympathy, others with doubt. And Karen? She was smiling, confident she had just crushed me in front of everyone. But instead of shrinking, I leaned forward and said calmly, "If you're going to accuse me, then show the proof. Show the exact rule, the exact evidence, and let's make sure everyone here sees it clearly." The room shifted. Neighbors began whispering. Karen froze for just a second, caught off guard that I hadn't cowered like the rest. Her face reddened, but she tried to keep her composure. "The board will look into it," she snapped, sitting down. I could see the cracks forming in her armor. That night, my wife told me it was time. She had stayed quiet out of respect for me, letting me handle it my way. But enough was enough. "She thinks she can intimidate you," my wife said, her voice steady but firm. "She doesn't know who she's dealing with. Maybe it's time she learns." And at that moment, I knew the tide was about to turn. Karen had played her games, thrown her threats, and built her little empire of fear. But she had no idea the storm waiting on the other side of our door. Karen had no idea what was coming. She thought she had me trapped under her rules, her fake complaints, and her loud voice. She thought she was untouchable. But the truth? She had just picked a fight with the wrong family. The next week, another notice came in the mail. This time, it was a threat of a fine. A big fine. Karen claimed I had violated multiple HOA rules repeatedly and now owed hundreds of dollars. She signed her name at the bottom like she was proud of it, as if this was her trophy. I looked at that paper, then looked at my wife. She didn't smile. She didn't frown. She just nodded slowly. That was the moment I knew Karen's little game was over. My wife sat down at her desk, pulled out her laptop, and started typing. Her fingers moved fast, her eyes sharp, and her face calm like a soldier preparing for battle. This wasn't the first time she had dealt with someone who thought they were above the law. She had seen people try to manipulate, to scare, to control. And every single time, she handled them with truth, with facts, and with power. She drafted a letter. But not just any letter. This one was built with authority, backed by real laws, real rights, and real consequences. It wasn't written in anger. It was written with precision. Every sentence was clear. Every point was strong. And every line reminded Karen that she was not the law. When my wife handed it to me, I almost felt bad for Karen. Almost. The next day, I slipped that letter into the HOA's mailbox, right on top where I knew Karen would see it first. Hours later, I watched from my porch as she pulled out, opened it, and began to read. At first, her face was smug, like she was ready to laugh at whatever I had written. But then her smile vanished. Her eyes moved faster. Her hands tightened on the paper, and her face slowly turned red. She wasn't laughing anymore. She looked up at my house, her jaw tight. But she didn't come storming over like before. For the first time, Karen was quiet. You see, my wife had done more than defend me. She had reminded Karen that abusing HOA power wasn't just annoying. It was illegal. False claims, fake fine, harassment. All of it could be challenged in court. And Karen? She didn't stand a chance in front of a real judge. But the best part? Karen didn't know my wife was that judge. Days passed. No new notices showed up. No angry confrontations. It was silent. Too silent. My neighbors noticed too. Some even came to me privately, whispering, "What did you do?" She hasn't bothered us all week. I just smiled and said, "Sometimes Bullies need a reminder that rules apply to them too. But Karen wasn't done. Not yet. At the next HOA meeting, she tried to save face. She stood up, acting like nothing had happened, and started talking about community unity and respect for the rules. But when it came time to discuss violations, she skipped over my name. Completely. Like she was afraid to even bring it up. That's when my wife, who usually stayed quiet in these meetings, finally spoke. Her voice was calm but carried weight, the kind of voice that made people stop what they were doing and listen. I think it's important that HOA rules are applied fairly, she said. No personal biases, no false claims, and definitely no harassment. Because if rules are abused, then it's not about protecting the community anymore. It becomes about control. And that's not what an HOA is for. The room went silent. All eyes turned to her. Karen shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Her face paled. She knew those words were directed at her, even if my wife hadn't said her name. Then one neighbor raised their hand. Honestly, we've all been scared to say something, but she's right. Karen, you've been too aggressive. We're tired of the constant complaints and threats. Another neighbor nodded. Yeah, last week you told my kids they couldn't ride their bikes in front of our house. That's not even the rules. One by one, voices rose. People who had been quiet for years suddenly found their courage. They shared their stories. The fines, the warnings, the yelling. The truth spilled out, and the so-called queen of the HOA was finally being seen for who she really was. Karen tried to fight back. She raised her voice, waved her hands, tried to silence everyone. But it was too late. The power she had built on fear was crumbling right in front of her. Finally, my wife leaned forward and said, clear and direct, this isn't about rules anymore. This is about abuse of power. And if it continues, there will be legal consequences. Trust me on that. Karen froze. She looked at my wife, then at me, and for the first time since we moved in, she didn't say a word. After that meeting, everything changed. No more notices. No more threats. Karen avoided us completely. In fact, she avoided everyone. The woman who once patrolled the neighborhood like a watchdog now stayed inside her house, curtains drawn, like the world had suddenly grown too big for her. The neighborhood felt lighter. Kids played outside without fear. Neighbors smiled more. It was as if the shadow that had hung over us all had finally lifted. And the best part? I didn't even have to reveal the full truth. Karen never knew my wife was a state judge. She never knew that the woman she had tried to scare had the power to end her games in one stroke. She never knew how close she came to real consequences. Because sometimes the greatest power is not in showing your cards, but in letting someone know you have them. Karen thought she could scare me, but in the end, she only scared herself.